I'd been looking forward to this dinner all week, a small moment of calm in the chaos of my life, a chance to finally catch up with a friend I hadn't seen in ages. The restaurant felt warm and inviting, the kind of place that made you forget about the outside world for a while. I slipped into my seat by the window, taking a deep breath as I smoothed the fabric of my dress, feeling that little spark of anticipation. It was nice to indulge in something special, just for me, even if it was just for a single night. I ordered a glass of wine and let myself lean back, ready to enjoy this simple pleasure. But that feeling didn't last long. As I sat there waiting, my eyes drifted across the room, and that's when I saw him. Daniel, my husband. The man I thought I knew inside and out. He was sitting at a table for two, but the woman sitting across from him wasn't anyone I recognized. Their laughter floated softly through the air, warm and intimate in a way that made my stomach twist. I felt my pulse quicken, a cold disbelief rising up from somewhere deep inside me as I watched them. It wasn't a business dinner. It wasn't anything innocent at all. In that cozy, candlelit corner of the restaurant, I saw it all in an instant. Every secret, every lie he thought he could keep from me. But what he didn't know was that tonight, I wasn't the only woman in his life, and I'd be the last one he'd ever underestimate. I sat there for a moment, my fingers wrapped tightly around the stem of my glass. I could feel my heart beating in my throat, but I forced myself to stay still, to breathe evenly. I wasn't going to make a scene, not tonight. I'd always prided myself on my composure, and I wasn't about to let it slip, not for him. The chatter of the restaurant carried on around me, but it felt like I was underwater, every sound muffled and distant. My eyes stayed locked on them, studying every gesture, every little touch that spoke volumes. He leaned in closer to her, a soft smile playing at the corners of his mouth, and she reached out to brush something from his sleeve, like they'd known each other for years. My mind raced, every memory of him crashing into this moment like a tidal wave. The dinners we'd shared, the nights we'd spent talking about our future, it all seemed so far away now. I felt something shift inside me then, a cold, hard clarity that cut through the shock. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a declaration, a silent confession in a crowded room. And as I watched them together, I knew exactly what I had to do next. The waiter passed by, offering a polite smile, but I barely noticed. My eyes were fixed on Daniel and that woman, the way their heads leaned together like a secret being shared. I thought I'd feel rage, or maybe heartbreak, but what I felt was something else entirely, a quiet certainty. I wasn't going to let him get away with this, not this time. He didn't know it yet, but the life he'd built on lies was about to crumble. I reached for my phone, not to call my friend, but to steady myself with a small comfort of routine. The gentle click of the screen, the familiar weight of it in my hand. It was almost grounding, like reminding myself of who I was in this moment. I'd always been the one to keep my head in a storm, and tonight was no different. My breathing evened out as I forced my shoulders back, refusing to let the shock steal my dignity. I caught Daniel's eye for just a second then, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe even guilt. But I didn't flinch. I let him see that I was watching, that I wasn't going to look away. And in that instant, I knew he could play his games all he wanted. Tonight, though, I was the one holding the cards. I didn't let myself react. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but I forced my face to stay calm, almost bored. I picked up my glass and took a slow sip, savoring the bitter bite of the wine as if it were the only thing in the world that mattered. Inside, though, my mind was already racing. I wasn't going to confront him here. No, he didn't deserve that kind of spectacle. I watched him from across the room, his laughter growing quieter as he realized I was still there, still watching. There was a flicker of something on his face, maybe fear, maybe regret, but it didn't matter to me anymore. I wasn't here for an explanation or an apology. I was here to make sure he felt that cold dread settling in his chest, the same way he'd made me feel tonight. I signaled for the waitress, my expression as polite and distant as I could make it. My hands didn't shake, my voice didn't waver. I was calm, almost detached, even as my mind ran through the next steps, each one colder and clearer than the last. I wouldn't let him see my rage. I'd let him read it instead. The waitress approached me with a soft smile, and I returned it, careful not to let any of the storm inside me show. She was just doing her job. She didn't need to see the cracks in my perfect calm. "Could you please bring me the check?" I asked, my voice low and even. She nodded, slipping away without a hint of hesitation, leaving me in the echo of my own thoughts. I watched Daniel in the reflection of the glass, the way his shoulders shifted uncomfortably as he kept glancing in my direction. It was almost poetic, really. The man who'd thought he could hide in the shadows, now caught in the full light of my gaze. I felt a flicker of satisfaction at the thought. I didn't need to raise my voice or make a scene to take back my power. All I needed was this quiet moment, and the perfect way to end it. My mind was already made up. I wouldn't let him see the heartbreak or the anger. Those were mine alone to bear. But the truth? That was his burden now. And I'd make sure he felt every ounce of it in the most unexpected way. I sat back in my chair, feeling the weight of the decision I'd already made settle over me like a second skin. It didn't feel like anger anymore. It felt like purpose. Each second that ticked by only sharpened the clarity in my mind. I wouldn't confront him with tears or shouting. I wouldn't let him twist this into something it wasn't. No, tonight was about me taking back control, and I'd do it on my own terms. The hum of the restaurant seemed to fade into the background as I planned my next move. The conversations around me became a blur of sound, and for a moment, it felt like there was no one else in the room. Just me, him, and the quiet weight of a truth that couldn't be denied. I was done being the woman in the shadows, the one who waited for answers. Tonight, he'd get his answers without me saying another word. When the waitress came back, I looked up at her with a calm smile that didn't reach my eyes. "One more thing," I said, my voice steady and soft. My mind was already turning to the message I was about to send, the note that would carry every ounce of betrayal he'd tried to hide, and every bit of resolve I had left. The idea came to me as naturally as breathing. I reached for the napkin on the table, feeling the rough texture beneath my fingertips. My hand was steady, my pulse calm, as I picked up the pen that sat beside my plate. There was something almost comforting in the act, like I was reclaiming a little piece of myself with every word I wrote. No need for a dramatic confrontation or raised voices. Just the simple power of the truth. I thought about every promise he'd broken, every lie he'd told to my face. I thought about the nights I'd spent believing his excuses, letting myself believe that love could hide so much. My hand moved across the napkin in smooth, deliberate strokes, each word a silent declaration of what I'd known all along. "I see you found someone new. I hope she's worth what you're about to lose." I folded the napkin carefully, tucking the sharp edge of my message inside the softness of the cloth. My fingers lingered there for a moment, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. It wasn't anger that guided me anymore. It was clarity. And in that quiet, perfect moment, I knew he'd never be able to hide behind his lies again. I looked up and caught the waitress's eye as she passed by my table. She paused, her expression patient and kind, and I gave her a small, polite smile. "Could you please give this to the gentleman at that table?" I asked softly, nodding in Daniel's direction. She didn't question it, just took the folded napkin from my hand with a gentle nod, her eyes warm with understanding. It was such a simple thing, but it felt like the final piece of something I'd been building inside me all night. I watched as she made her way across the restaurant, weaving through the maze of tables with the quiet grace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. My breath caught for a moment, a small flutter of anticipation as she approached Daniel's table. It felt like time had slowed, every second stretching out like an eternity as I waited for the note to land in front of him. When she reached him, she didn't say a word, just placed the napkin on the edge of the table and walked away. I could see the confusion on Daniel's face as he looked down at it, his brows knitting together in that familiar way I used to find so endearing. But tonight there was nothing left of that feeling. Tonight I wanted him to feel what it was like to be blindsided. I watched from my seat as he slowly unfolded the napkin, his fingers hesitating like he already knew what he was about to read. His eyes scanned the words, and I saw the exact moment they sank in. His face went pale, his lips parted like he was about to say something, but no words came out. It was almost satisfying, seeing the shock flicker across his features, the kind of shock that couldn't be hidden, no matter how hard he tried. The woman with him leaned closer, confusion turning to alarm as she saw the sudden change in his expression. I saw her glance my way, her eyes searching for an explanation, but I didn't offer one. I just sat there, calm and still, letting them both see that I wasn't the same woman they'd taken for granted. I was done waiting for answers. I was giving them instead. For a heartbeat, everything seemed to hold still. The low hum of the restaurant fading, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows across the table. And in that breathless moment, I felt a sense of power I hadn't known I still had. The note had spoken for me, and it said everything that needed to be said. I watched him from my seat, every tiny shift in his expression playing out like a silent movie just for me. His eyes darted around the room as if he was searching for a way out, a way to pretend it wasn't happening. But there was no escape. Not from the truth, and not from me. I could see the panic starting to bloom in his eyes, turning his face pale in the soft glow of the restaurant's candles. The woman across from him was starting to understand too, her eyes flicking between him and me, confusion giving way to something colder. She pulled her hand away from his, her posture stiffening like she'd suddenly realized she was part of something she hadn't signed up for. It wasn't fair to her, I knew that. But the moment she sat down with my husband, fairness left the table. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I let them both see me sitting there, calm and composed, the weight of my silence louder than any scream. This wasn't a scene from a movie or some messy confrontation. It was real life, and I wanted them to feel every second of it. He looked at me then, really looked, and in that one glance, I saw the fear he'd tried so hard to hide. I let the silence do all the talking. It was almost poetic, really, the way the clinking of silverware and the soft murmur of other diners seemed to fade into the background. The world around us kept moving, but in that little corner of the restaurant, time had stopped for us. I could see every detail of his face, the way his hands trembled ever so slightly as he tried to fold the napkin back into something neat and meaningless. But the words wouldn't disappear, no matter how hard he tried. The truth was out now, written in my own hand, and there was no erasing it. He looked up at me again, his lips parted like he wanted to say something. An excuse, maybe, or an apology he thought might smooth over the cracks. But I didn't give him the chance. I met his gaze head-on, my expression calm, almost kind. I wanted him to know that this wasn't just some petty act of revenge. This was me reclaiming my voice, taking back the pieces of myself he'd tried to keep in the dark. And as he sat there, caught in the weight of his own shame, I felt a flicker of something close to relief. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one left wondering. She looked at me too, her eyes wide and searching, like she was trying to piece together the truth that had just fallen into her lap. I saw the shame in her expression, the quick flick of her gaze down to her hands as she realized who I was and what he'd done. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But tonight wasn't about her. It was about him, and the quiet ruin of the world he'd tried to build in the shadows. I held his gaze, unblinking, as he tried to find the right words to bridge the gap he'd opened between us. But there were no words left, no excuses that could make this right. The note had spoken for me, and it said everything he needed to hear. I felt the weight of the moment settle in my chest, a steady beat of certainty that I wouldn't let him slip away from. I could see it in his face, the understanding that there was no going back from this. And as I sat there, calm and resolute, I knew I was done letting him have the upper hand. In that quiet, breathless space between us, I let the finality of it all sink in. And though I didn't say a single word, he understood exactly what I was telling him. I stood up slowly, feeling the soft rustle of my dress as I rose from the chair. My heart was steady now, the earlier rush of adrenaline fading into a quiet resolve. I reached into my purse, pulling out enough cash to cover my drink, and maybe a little extra for the waitress who'd unknowingly helped me tonight. I didn't look back at Daniel as I placed the money on the table. He'd had his chance to explain, to fight for what he was about to lose. But I wasn't giving him that chance anymore. I took one last look around the restaurant, letting the warmth and laughter of other diners wash over me like a gentle reminder that life goes on, even when your world feels like it's falling apart. There was a strange comfort in that thought, in the small, steady hum of other people's lives continuing around me. I didn't feel the need to linger or to cling to what was already broken. It was time to leave. As I stepped away from the table, I felt the weight of every step, each one a small declaration that I was done. I didn't need to shout or make a scene to show him the truth. My quiet exit would be louder than any words I could have spoken. And in that moment, I felt lighter than I had in years. I didn't rush as I walked out of the restaurant. Each step was deliberate, measured, a quiet rebellion against the storm I'd just left behind. I could feel the cool evening air brush against my skin as I pushed open the door, the sudden chill a sharp contrast to the warmth of the room I was leaving behind. It felt like a baptism of sorts, washing away the weight of what I'd just seen and done. For a moment, I paused on the sidewalk, taking a deep breath as I let the city's energy pulse around me. Cars moved past in a blur of headlights. People laughed in clusters along the street, and somewhere in the distance, music drifted from an open window. It was life, messy and beautiful, and utterly indifferent to my heartbreak. And somehow, that made it easier to keep moving. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, my fingers steady as I dialed the number I'd saved for moments just like this. My lawyer's voice crackled to life on the other end, calm and professional, and I felt a small surge of relief in the certainty of her words. This was the next step, the final step, and I was ready to take it. I stepped into the cab with a sense of finality that settled deep in my bones. The driver gave me a polite nod, the city's lights reflecting in the rearview mirror as he pulled away from the curb. I didn't look back at the restaurant. I didn't need to. My eyes were focused straight ahead, the future stretching out in front of me like a clean slate. In the soft glow of the cab's interior, I thought about everything that had led me to this moment. The years of love, the quiet betrayals, the promises that had turned to dust in his hands. I let those memories settle behind me like footprints in the snow, there, but no longer holding me in place. My phone buzzed softly against my palm, the sound of my lawyer's quiet voice a lifeline in the quiet night. He thought he could have a secret life, I whispered to myself, the words tasting like freedom. But I made sure he'd never forget the day I ended it. As the cab carried me away, I felt a small, fierce smile tug at the corners of my lips. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally writing my own ending.